I'm Curtis Daly, and if you're just joining me, then of course you are seeing me for the first time, but others might have come across from Navarra Media, where I co-host over there on Navarra Live. I'm a very busy guy, but I'm very happy to be joined by Kevin Logan. How are you doing?
I'm so excited. Are you from Navarra Media? Can I have your autograph, please, Mr.
Yeah,
Curtis, please?
you'll get it in the mail. I don't need your address. It will find its way there.
Yeah, just put it in the gutter. It'll get to me.
It will, won't it? That's not very nice. Being harsh on yourself there. You deserve more than that. But anyway,
No.
let's get on with tonight's show. Coming up for you, we have Rachel Reeves crying in P&Q, or at P&Q's during the welfare rebellion, it seems. Andrew Neil compares Bob Vylan to the Nazis, and journalists pressure BBC to remove a Zionist. As always, remember to like the stream, and if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. We'll be getting to your comments at the end, so please make sure you are very busy in the chat. But on to our first story. Keir Starmer has been forced to abandon the central part of his welfare bill to get it through its first Commons hurdle. After a week of chaos that damaged his political authority, Labour MPs agreed to pass the bill only after Starmer dropped planned cuts to disability benefits. The bill, focused on universal credit and personal independent payments, passed its second reading with a majority of 75. However, 49 Labour MPs rebelled, the largest revolt so far under Starmer's leadership. Now, the original bill would have affected up to 800,000 people. Now, with the PIP changes, I won't say scrapped, but delayed, that number has likely been reduced to 150,000. But that's still 150,000 people being punished. Now, spotted at PMQs today was Rachel Reeves shedding a tear.
And may I take this opportunity to thank our outstanding British Transport Police for everything that they do to support staff and passengers. Mr. Speaker, we put in place the most significant funding for farmers in the budget. We've got a roadmap for work for farmers that we're working on, and of course where they fail to actually spend.
So, I mean, she's crying because, partly anyway, the welfare bill was watered down, right? She's crying because less people are going to be affected by these welfare reforms. But many disabled people are still going to be affected. Why is that something that gets you upset? Kevin, the upside is that the changes to PIP have been removed, but I want to ask you, why have the front bench made such a big fight and, made risks over cuts to welfare? Why is this a hill they are willing to die on?
Well, I mean, firstly, I think we're going to have to put a lot of money into developing a subatomic level size of violin for me to play, to show my sympathy to the boo-hoo crocodile tears of Miss Reeves in Parliament today. Honestly, the fact that she wanted to eviscerate the poorest in society, and the fact that she is a sitting officer, not just a random member, an officer of the Labour Friends of Israel, who are engaged in supporting and aiding and abetting a genocide right now, I couldn't care less that she's crying. She deserves to cry. She's a bad person. In terms of why they've decided to die on this hill, well, clearly and obviously, the cruelty was the point. That was always the accusation that was thrown at this, and that's clearly the case because they've essentially filleted every aspect of this bill in order to try and get some sort of bill through, so they can appear to be trying to be harsh on disabled people, harsh on people on benefits in general, because this bill wasn't for Labour voters. This bill was for Rupert Murdoch and his people. This was for the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, etc. Because Morgan McSweeney, the government's main advisor, is one of the biggest ghouls in the country, seemingly, who seems to think the only way you can win working class voters back is by being absolutely horrific towards the poorest in society, which statistically just doesn't work out. We've seen the polling. No party's voters at the last election were in favour of this change. The Tories were about 46% in favour, but no party had a majority. And it was something like 70% of Labour voters were against this. The reason they've decided to go with this is because they have to appear to be harsh on those on benefits, let alone the fact that this was going to impoverish the already impoverished further and further. The fact that they were boasting during yesterday's debate that their changes had removed had taken it from 250,000 people that would be drawn into poverty to just 150,000, and of those, 100,000 into absolute poverty, and they were boasting about this, means they will deserve the absolute annihilation that awaits them at the next general election.
I mean, you're quite right that this is the politics of the Murdochs, right? They love it when they talk about cutting welfare because, of course, it distracts from the very salient issue of inequality, the fact that billionaires exist where they shouldn't do. We need to be taxing the rich. Of course, they want to talk about that. But who else is this for? I mean, you've just pointed out here that there's no political party, or at least no voters that support this, even Reform voters.
Yeah.
Obviously, out of any political party, it's the Conservatives who are most likely to support this. But the latest poll I saw was, you're right, 46%. It wasn't a plurality, but that was 46% of people. The question was, would you support, reducing disability benefits for those who are in work? 46% said yes. When the question was, would you support the same measures if they're not in work? That drastically goes down. So there's no one in this country who really supports this. So who are they doing this for? What's the political science behind this?
Firstly, Morgan McSweeney is not exactly the median voter whisperer that everyone claims him to be. The Prime Minister said that the briefing against Mr. McSweeney needs to stop because he's an idiot. He said that Morgan McSweeney was crucial to their election victory, and without him it would have been impossible. Again, not true, because the Labour Party didn't win the general election. The Tory Party lost it. The Tory Party committed metaphorical suicide on the hill of ridiculous neoliberalism. And a sort of broader point about if Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves and whoever else is in support of this evil nonsense, if the genuine believers amongst them, you're allowed to just be a Conservative. If that's your politics, fine, join the Conservative Party. Get out of the Labour Party because you don't support Labour. You don't support any level of either socialism or even social democracy. You don't support any kind of progressivism. If you're a Conservative, go and join them, because that's where you belong.
These PIP changes, right, they will remove from the bill, but it's not been scrapped. It looks like it's going to be delayed, right?
Yes.
Surely, if they try and... Well, I just want to say, surely if they try and push this through again in the future, there's going to be rebels again, and this whole infighting will start again.
Yeah. Well, it will be delayed until after the 2026 Timms report. That's Stephen Timms, who's the junior minister in the department, who was the person who had to stand up and give a concession, a U-turn on a piece of the legislation during somebody else's contribution, which has never happened before. That's a completely unprecedented, shambolic disaster of a way of trying to draw legislation up. So they have promised to make that change and remove Clause 5 of the bill, which is the one about you have to meet certain criteria in order to be officially designated as available for PIP. You have to meet those 4 criteria or more, which basically made it impossible for disabled people to even prove that they were disabled. They will remove that at second reading, and then after the Timms report, which will be published at some point in the autumn of 2026, they then can potentially reintroduce it. Now, the trick that they're going to try and pull, and this is all, you can tell that Keir Starmer is a lawyer, the technicalities here. Timms was asked specifically whether these changes, if reintroduced, would be under primary or secondary legislation. It sounds technical, but the point being that if it's primary legislation, it can be amended by the members of the House of Commons. So in other words, there's a chance for a rebellion. There's a chance that they can change it to make it less harsh. Whereas if it's secondary legislation, they can't. And they refused point blank to answer which type of legislation those changes would be introduced under. So basically, they're going to try and fudge it and get all of the things that they wanted to do in 2026 in a way that goes against and denies the right of scrutiny for the House of Commons, which again shows absolute contempt for the Labour backbenches and for democracy more generally.
I mean, I listened to Jonathan Reynolds on GMB. I saw a clip earlier, and obviously they were asking him about these welfare changes, and he said, "Of course, we need welfare reform because the level of the amount of people in work in this country is very, very low. So we need to reduce benefits to get people into work, right? And of course, this is a very pervasive idea." A narrative that has got a stronghold in the British press and the media, which is that basically there's loads of shirkers, there's loads of lazy people, and our benefit system is too kind. Well, of course, the facts don't really care about people's feelings because, first of all, the level of payments when it comes to welfare is very low in our country. I think we're either the or one of the worst in Europe, with the lowest levels of payments in Europe, right? And looking at Denmark, here's a very interesting fact, which a lot of people don't talk about. I guess it's because people don't know about it. Denmark has far more people in work. They have between 75 and 80% of people who can work are in work, far more than the UK. But at the same time, their welfare payments are far more generous. So it shows there is zero correlation between cutting benefits and getting people into work. Of course, I personally believe there's a reason why. And one of those reasons is I actually think higher welfare payments is better to get people into work. So morals, morality aside, because obviously the result of cutting benefits doesn't get people into work. It's what happened under the Conservatives under George Osborne, which was 330,000 people essentially being murdered by the state. If you increase benefits, to me, that tells that basically gives people breathing room to, I don't know, get a job, get some new clothes. I mean, for example, I'm going to use a personal anecdote, right? But a couple of years ago, I had an interview as a manager at a pub in Nottingham, and I was living in Bristol at the time. I had to get the train to the pub. That cost me 70 quid. That's 70 quid for a train is obviously disgusting. That's not cheap. I had to have that money. What about these days where more and more jobs are working from home? You're going to need a decent laptop. You're going to need a smartphone. A smartphone is no longer a luxury, I don't believe, in today's society. There's these things you need: new clothes, new shoes for an interview. If you're disabled, Lewis Aaron shared with us a story on Monday about how some people have accidents if they're disabled, and over the course of time, it's new sheets, new clothing. Aside from obviously it must be very difficult emotionally and physically, you've also got the government clamping down on you. It's basically really expensive to be poor and really expensive to be disabled.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, yeah. And this is the whole point. This is not going to help anyone into work, but that's not the purpose of it. And everyone knows that's not really the purpose of it. It's about being performatively cruel so that you look like you're the adults in the room. You can say that you're fiscally responsible, which of course isn't true. They straitjacketed themselves, this government, by having fiscal rules which didn't make a lot of sense and which they said were absolutely cast iron and that they would never break, but have already broken. So, but by just changing the definitions. So change the definitions again then. Why do you have to go after the disabled when you could just raise taxes on the incredibly wealthy? I mean, that would actually be popular as well.
Is it potentially because they receive millions of pounds from corporations, from vulture capitalists,
Yeah, literally.
Oil industry, healthcare industry? Is it,
Quadrilateral Capital literally gave them £4 million just after the cut-off point that they would have to reveal that before election day. So they were essentially bought for £4 million and a few tickets to the Arsenal and a few dresses for Mrs. Starmer. That's it. Like, they're some of the cheapest political prostitutes that have ever existed.
Precisely. Very well put, but we are going to move on to our next story. Now, the establishment... I'll start again, sorry. The establishment have lost their minds over Bob Vylan's comments at Glastonbury. The duo have been smeared as anti-Semitic, which I doubt surprises any of you. However, Andrew Neil went even further and seemingly compared Bob Vylan to the Nazis. This is him engaging in what one could describe as Holocaust denial on talk radio.
Death, death to the IDF, shouted moronic rapper Pascal Robinson Foster at the Glastonbury Music Festival. A posh double-barrel name is perhaps not the best handle for a self-styled Rasta radical, so he goes by the name Bobby Vylan instead. We'll stick to his real name. As he strutted the stage, shirtless in his white underwear, mouthing his mantra, along with a generous dose of anti-Semitism, the Glasgow crowd dutifully repeated it, again and again. I'm not sure what was worse, Mr. Robinson Foster's call for the death of Israeli Defence Forces or a mindless audience's brain-dead repetition of it. Since the IDF is all that stands between Israel's survival and it being wiped out by its Islamist enemies, to call for the death of the IDF is tantamount to advocating a second Holocaust. No doubt they hadn't quite thought that through. I was going to say that they sometimes seem to have more in common with a Nuremberg rally. But even the Nazis did not scream death to the Jews at their rallies, even if they thought it, and that was their intention. At Glastonbury, a generation which wallows in woke, never had to don a uniform to defend his country, and whose idea of danger is to risk reading or seeing something that might trigger it, well, that generation not only thought it said it out loud.
Now, I just want to correct myself. That was Times Radio, not Talk Radio, but that was absolutely insane. Now, the reason why Neil's comments could be seen as Holocaust denial is the fact that he said even the Nazis didn't say death to the Jews. I mean, they very much did. But to compare the chant, death to the IDF, which is an institution, a military force committing genocide, is in any way comparable to Nuremberg rallies and the Nazis, is not only disgusting, but incredibly insulting to everyone who was killed in the Holocaust. And also referencing one of the duos, the main singer of Bob Vylan, saying he's got a double-barreled name. I mean, the racist implication there is to say, whoa, he's black. That's a white-sounding name. I've seen a lot of people pick up on that, and it is. I think it's a definite racist thing to say. Kevin, it seems the establishment has a collective delusion, and the hysteria is only getting far, far worse.
Yeah, the political establishment, be it politicians or the media, have shown themselves, if anyone needed any further proof, how far they are from actually representing the nation they purport to describe and to lead. The overwhelming majority of people in the country oppose the actions of the IDF and of Israel more broadly, but you wouldn't know that from looking at the media or Parliament, who have fallen all over themselves to pearl clutch about Bob Vylan and Kneecap over the last few weeks. This is a genuinely embarrassing rant from a deluded old dinosaur in Mr. Neil. I don't even know where to start with him. Firstly, double-barrel names might seem posh to a white British guy, but in mixed-race families, and indeed in Afro-Caribbean families more broadly, the compound of the mother and father's surname to create a double-barrel name is a very, very common thing. It is not a posh thing at all. You reveal yourself for the old school pillock that you are there, Mr. Neil. Secondly, at no point did anyone at Glastonbury, as far as I'm aware, chant death to the Jews. I didn't hear that. I heard death to the IDF. IDF and Jewish are two separate things. They just are. As propagandists for Israel like to point out regularly, there are non-Jewish members of the IDF. So not all members of the IDF are Jewish, and indeed the vast majority of Jewish people in the world are not in the IDF. So they're clearly not synonymous things. That's ridiculous. And you have to go quite some way to try and conflate this as being anti-Semitic in any real way whatsoever. His Holocaust denial is pretty grotesque, considering the Nazis not only chanted death to the Jews, but then went and murdered over 6 million Jewish people. The idea that Bob Vylan are in any way comparable is a grotesque thing, and if I were Bob Vylan, I would be contacting lawyers and seeking, let's say, restitution, legally speaking, from Mr. Neil, because that was clear and obvious traducement of their name, and I think pretty obviously legal slander on Andrew Neil's part. But more broadly, this speaks to the disconnect between the political class in this country and the average person in this country. The reason that Zionists are so angry about this is not because they actually believe that what Bob Vylan said was anti-Semitic, because they clearly don't have a problem with anti-Semitism. They do it a lot themselves. The reason that they're so against this is that they saw the repetition of death to the IDF and free Palestine and from the river to the sea, not just on the stage during Kneecap and Bob Vylan's performance, but in various other people's performances at the festival, was that they saw the youth of both Britain and more broadly of the West turning against the very well-crafted and funded lie of Israel as the most moral country in the world and the IDF as the most moral army in the world. That's being rejected because everyone has seen for the past 18 months what has been true for the last 80 years, which is that Israel is a settler colonial genocidal endeavor, and people aren't going to put up with it anymore. And once that dam breaks, Israel knows that the very thing it needs to survive, contrary to Andrew Neil's nonsense point about the IDF being the only thing that stands in its way, is the fact that Western countries, most notably America, but also Germany and Britain and France, are there as the guarantor of the state of Israel, without which Israel would not survive on its own.
Yeah, quite right. I mean, Andrew Neil's defense, or I don't know if it was really defense, but he said, well, the reason why I'm comparing them to the Nazis is because the IDF is the last sort of line of defense against Islamist extremists who want to wipe them all out. And this is, and a part of a big tenet of Zionism is anti-Arab hatred and Islamophobia.
Yeah.
Because there are, I think this is the way I think people on the right view this conflict, right, between Israel and Palestine, is that they think Israel is the defender of Judeo-Christian values, and Palestine is defense or enforcement of Islam or Islamism. That's the way they see it, and that's the way they want it to be. In reality, it's nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with religion for us. It's the fact that there is an ethnic cleansing, there's a genocide, and there's war crimes going on. The most heinous crimes that are imaginable are happening. I'm an atheist. I don't believe in God. I have no religion, and that means nothing to me. The religion aspect is nothing. It's about supporting human beings. It's a humanitarian crisis. But I think people on the right, and a lot of the far right who love Israel, seemingly, it's kind of a sort of an entrance to their Islamophobia, and I think that's why they see it like that. And that is why I think they view pro-Palestine activists and the marches that happen every weekend. I think some of them are being truthful when they say, "Oh, it's an Islamist march." When I say truthful, as in like they really believe that.
They believe that, nonsense, But I think many of them don't. There are a myriad of different ways in which one can find themselves on the side of Israel on this. Some are genuine believers, some are religious extremists, some are Jewish supremacists, and let's be honest, I think the majority of the British media and political class are bought and paid for shills. They've been bought and paid for. We know the amounts of money that have been given by pro-Israel lobbyists to members of the Labour Party. The Conservative Party don't even need to be bought out. They're actually just fans of ethno-colonialism, so they don't even need to be bribed. But we know how much AIPAC gives to American politicians and all the rest of it. I think we need to really start looking at the way in which the Israeli government, as a foreign government, as a foreign entity, has used its power and its wealth to infiltrate and to undermine democracy in the Western world, because they've essentially made any kind of independent foreign policy in the West, in West Asia, in the Middle East, as impossible for many nations, because all of their political classes don't represent the people and their views. They represent those of a very far right clique in Israel.
And I think what Andrew Neil was saying is disgusting and grotesque, and I think it insults those that were killed in the Holocaust to compare. Remember, this is not even an anti-Semitic chant. It's about a military.
Yeah, the IDF are not an ethnicity, so it's not racist.
They're not a protected characteristic, right? But even if he were to say something anti-Semitic, still to compare this to the Holocaust is grotesque and disgusting. Yeah. But of course, Bob Vylan wasn't doing that, and no one's doing that.
But it's not surprising. Those who are pro-Israel are some of the most egregious of individuals when it comes to undermining the seriousness of the Holocaust. They will treat absolutely any minor opposition to the state of Israel or the IDF as being akin to the Holocaust. They consistently undermine the memory of those people who died, and indeed the survivors who are held up for propaganda reasons as being important Israelis, but are often actually treated like second-class citizens in Israel. This is nothing to do with the Holocaust. This is nothing to do with Judaism. This is to do with a small clique, unfortunately a growing clique, because they've had propaganda power over generations of Israelis now, of extremists, of Jewish supremacist extremists who want to enable the expansion of Israel for the benefit of tens of millions of evangelical Christians in the United States, who use their power to make sure that America funds said thing in a kind of triangle of bigotry, if you will.
Quite right. And I really, really hope that Bob Vylan sues Andrew Neil's ass.
Absolutely, yes.
They need to lawyer up. He needs to lawyer up, because lawsuits need to start flying. We saw so many attacks over the years against Jeremy Corbyn, and of course he was probably too busy at the time when he was Labour leader to do anything about it, right? But these people need to start defending themselves, because these lies are so disgusting. It's the greatest McCarthyite campaign, I think, of our time.
Yeah, well, it goes beyond just Andrew Neil. I mean, the Daily Mail, for instance, literally quoted, it had in quotation marks that Bob Vylan had chanted death to Israelis, which he didn't say. That's not the thing they
that's a
said.
literal factual error.
Yeah,
A
on their
lie.
front page in the headline. So yeah, I would lie her up, and I would be suing them for everything they're worth. Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on from there. But before we go on to our last story, I just want to say if you're enjoying the stream, then please like and subscribe. Just to remind viewers that we are 5 volunteers. We do not get paid for this work, but one day we would love for this to be our full-time jobs. So if you can, then consider becoming a supporter by going to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can become a monthly patron, or there is another link for a one-off donation. Of course, you can also become a YouTube member for just 99p. Now, we would really love to be able to afford a studio. We can have a consistent show, plus it means we can have far more in-person interviews. So we are aiming to reach an income of £1,500 per month. So again, if you can, then please consider becoming a supporter. Now, on to our final story. People are seeing through the pro-Israel bias at the BBC. Over 400 celebrities and media personalities, including 111 BBC journalists, have signed a letter urging BBC management to remove board member Robbie Gibb amidst their worries over the BBC being too scared to criticise Israel. The letter, released just before Channel 4 aired the documentary Gaza, Doctors Under Attack, which the BBC commissioned but then shelved, citing concerns it risked creating a perception of partiality, claims that this decision once again shows that the BBC is not reporting without fear or favour when it comes to Israel. Now, who is Robbie Gibb? Robbie Gibb sits on an influential BBC editorial standards committee, led a consortium which rescued the Jewish Chronicle from insolvency in 2020, and was the only director of the company that owns it until last month. So that's the same right-wing, extreme Zionist Jewish Chronicle that leaked fake news stories from Benjamin Netanyahu himself through freelance writer Elon Perry. Kevin, what do you make of this letter? I mean, it seems more and more people are waking up to the pro-Israel connections at the BBC, including 111 BBC journalists.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that somebody's waking up. I'm glad that there is some pushback now, because the BBC has really shown itself in a very poor light. Not only does it not have the kind of moderation and kind of neutral way of approaching this, as it would with virtually any other topic in the world, it is clearly and obviously been co-opted by Zionists for their own purposes. We've seen, as you say, the individual Gibb on the board there, who should be absolutely nowhere near an oversight board considering his connections. We've seen the fantastic reporting from Alan McLeod about Rafi Berg, who is was one of the main people at the editors at the Middle East News Board at the BBC, who was a person who bragged openly about being a CIA agent and having collaborated with Mossad in terms of the distribution of stories in the West. We have seen consistently that the British Broadcasting Corporation has not approached this from any perspective of neutrality. This has been consistent pro-Zionist, pro-Israel propaganda, basically. It's been Israeli state propaganda from start to finish. We've seen the way in which the deaths of Israelis have been given 33 times the amount of coverage as the deaths of Palestinians. We have seen the way that every single time a person has ever said that this was genocide, they instantly break in with the Israeli government deny that. Every time there is strong criticism of Israel, the presenter will always break in and interrupt the person to say the Israeli government deny that. All the time, as if they are indeed acting as spokesperson for the Israeli government, which in essence they have been. We have seen the way in which Gary Lineker, a person who isn't even a journalist involved in politics, but spoke out in favour of peace in the Middle East, was shelved from hosting football, from being in sport at the BBC. Such is the clutches in which the BBC finds itself. And it's not alone. You look at consistently across the board, state institutions in the UK have been co-opted by Zionist forces. And again, they essentially operate as an Israeli fifth column in Britain, undermining British independence and sovereignty. And this needs to be looked at, because are we an independent nation or are we not? At the moment, we seem to be at the behest of America, which is no surprise to anybody, but also to Israel via proxy. And that isn't a tolerable situation. And people are going to start fighting back. And thankfully, the BBC employees that have stuck their head above the parapet on this and have been brave in doing so, because many of them will face consequences for their careers, deserve every plaudit in the world for having done so, albeit maybe later than would have been ideal. But even so, the fact that they have now done so, I think, shows, as with the chanting at Glastonbury, that the dam has begun to break on this one, that people are only going to be prepared to be pushed so far before they fight back on this.
For all those on the right who think the BBC is anti-Israel, right, that pushes Hamas propaganda,
ludicrous.
We have the receipts that show that this is utter rubbish, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They commissioned this documentary, the Doctors Under Attack, and then refused to show it. Not because of any inaccuracies, not because of bias that was found in it. They just didn't want to, because it told the truth. And the truth is that Israel is engaged in a genocide. It is deliberately targeting healthcare workers and journalists and children and civilians consistently. And thankfully, Channel 4 and Zateo News have been brave enough to do the thing that the BBC couldn't or wouldn't do and show this. And I think that's a worthwhile thing. But it's worrying for democracy, it's worrying for the future of the state broadcaster and for independent journalism in general here in the UK, the chilling effect that something like that can have on people telling the truth, people being able to speak truth to power in an era where we've seen consistently governments trying to crack down on independent media, governments trying to crack down on, frankly, any kind of pushback across the board. There's been an increasing authoritarianism from people like Donald Trump and, let's be honest, from Keir Starmer and his government towards groups like not Climate Crisis, what are they called? Just Stop Oil, thank you very much, and various other groups. The fact that they literally today are trying to make it illegal to say that you support Palestine Action, an organisation that we were told had taken terrorist activity towards 2 planes, one of which is literally already back in service and flying on its way now to Cyprus to be used to refuel Israeli warplanes to bomb civilians today. That's happening right now. We know that RAF Bryce Norton, the RAF station, which was quote unquote terrorized by Palestine Action, is literally hosting American planes which are being sent to Israel to aid and abet the genocide there as well. We are a staging post of genocide. But apparently it's Palestine Action that are the terrorists. Absolute madness.
I mean, their excuse from the BBC not to add the documentary was they were worried about partiality. And this is something which transcends the BBC, by the way. It's an issue with the entire media, which is this obsession with balance, right? And what gets forgotten and what gets thrown by the wayside is objective reporting. So, of course, what that means is if it's raining outside, you don't get two people to debate whether it's raining outside. You literally fucking go outside, right?
Yeah.
And look, if a documentary shows Israel in a bad light, that's simply because they are doing war crimes, right? They're just showing people for who they are, and that's just objective reporting. The only excuse you can have to say we're going to pull this because the bad guys doing bad things make them look bad is if you are biased toward Israel,
towards the bad guys,
and this obsession with trying to appear balanced, right, actually ends up being not very balanced because you end up sort of putting too much. You make excuses for the other side in order to look like you're both siding an issue, but rather you're just doing propaganda for, in this instance, the Israeli state.
Yeah, well, we've seen from reporting from Haaretz, which again, having talked about the way in which media has been clamped down, Haaretz is one of the few outlets in Israel that does anything like objective reporting. Such is the state of free media in quote-unquote the only democracy in the region. What a joke. Anyway, Haaretz has literally been publishing a series of articles from the point of view of IDF soldiers from the front line. And they've literally had them saying we were told to target civilians. Or we were bored, so we targeted civilians. Or, pardon me. Or, indeed, one of them saying, we felt like the Nazis and these people were the Jews. That's a literal quote from an IDF soldier who is currently being driven out of their post in an American university, not for the war crimes that they admitted to engaging in, but for revealing the war crimes that they were engaged in. Because that's anti-Semitism, apparently.
Wild stuff, but of course, very well put. I think that wraps everything up for the stories, but of course, that's not the end of the show. We're going to go to our producer for your comments. Welcome, Callum. How are we doing?
Testing 1 2. I mute this mic every time I try to come in, so hopefully you can hear me this time.
Are you there?
Don't even go there, Kevin.
We have people in our chat who do that, and I'm like, no, don't do that. We have enough tech issues as it
F's
is.
in chat. F's in chat.
To be fair, the last couple of shows has been, no tech issues so far. So
Oh, don't say that now.
now I feel like I've jinxed it.
Firstly, just shout out to Specs for gifting 5 turn left
Thank you
membership.
so much.
Oi, oi.
Once again, much appreciated.
We've got Errol, we've got Les, we've got Mark, we've got Stu, and we've got Daniela as well. So all of you, welcome. To
Double barrel
team.
name.
How dare you? Yeah, where would you like to start? Let's start with Anne. It's good that Curtis is getting airtime because Curtis doesn't get much airtime.
Yeah, is this fecker ever off the TV? Jesus Christ!
Next time I'll give you a shout out.
I think we'll just go in order. So, Rachel Atwood's asked in relation to Rachel Reeves: is she about to lose her job? What do we reckon?
Fingers crossed.
Well, I mean, look, I think I said that on Navarre, and Stephen sort of came back and said, "Oh, really?" As if to sort of signal that I'm not sure that he really believed it. I don't think we should be making too many political predictions. There's no point. But I don't think her position is as strong as it was, right? Because obviously, Keir Starmer's going to need some kind of fall guy, and the guy will happily scrap Rachel Reeves. I mean, she's not a popular chancellor, right? Obviously, Keir Starmer's not popular, so I don't think if you were to get rid of Rachel Reeves and put someone else in, that's suddenly going to fix their brand image. Their brand image is completely tarnished.
Yeah.
No thanks to Keir Starmer himself.
Well, I don't think any of them come out of it looking good. None of their positions are stronger than they were even this time yesterday. Really,
I think it's like you said though, Kevin. When you have to send in a government minister midway through a debate to interrupt somebody's speech to make a change to a piece of legislation that's literally being debated, you've lost.
Exactly. Even under Boris Johnson or Theresa May or any of those Tory shambles governments, they never had to do anything like that. I've never seen that before. It was really, really bad. It just shows you how poorly this was thought through. And they had 10 months they've been being warned by the whips that this was coming, and they just went, it'll be fine. Until the last minute where you have to, like you say, you have to run in there. And I mean, I don't feel sorry for her in the slightest because she's a genuinely evil woman. But the benefits minister was literally defending this all day. She was out there saying that this had to happen. If it didn't happen, the public finances would be ruined. And then they sent Timms in to say, no, actually, it doesn't have to happen. It's fine. And that's just humiliating,
It's really humiliating. It really is. I do worry that Rachel Reeves is being made the fall guy for this, though, and I do feel like she's been thrown under the bus a bit because Kemi Badenoch alluded to this today about the fact that she's taking the hit for Keir Starmer's weak leadership. This bill should have been pulled. It should never have even got to the point that they were having to make concessions during the debate. The fact that it was allowed to get that far shows that the whole thing hasn't. I mean, Starmer admitted himself that he didn't have his eye on the game because he was too busy worrying about what was going on with Iran and Israel.
Well, if that's the case, then you're not fit to be prime minister because you do have to be on top of all of your briefs. That's just the way it works. If you can't handle two topics at one time, you leave. You're not.
And if only Keir Starmer focused more on domestic policy than global issues, that will be a good thing as well. Because I think that this is where he himself feels like he shines, is when he's on the world stage. He really wants to be that statesman-like figure, and he loves it, especially when talking about Ukraine and visiting Zelensky. He absolutely revels in that. Yeah. Whilst at the same time, the country's burning because we had race riots. At the same time, we have multiple crises, whether it's the climate crisis, we have a crisis of inequality, automation, all these crazy things going on, and he wants to abandon that. So I feel like we want him to do more at home.
Yeah, you You said before, Curtis, that it's not it's not always good to make political predictions. Speaking of political predictions, Michael said Wes Streeting as Chancellor by the end of the week.
Well,
If Rachel Reeves were to go, it's likely, if she's probably going to go before Starmer. Do you think that Wes would be considered? I mean, it's no secret he wants to be PM, but do
Well,
you think
exactly. Would he give
be...
up? Would he give up his number 10? Because let's be honest, being Chancellor is a poison chalice. You're not going to become Prime Minister if you're a Chancellor.
Rishi Sunak did it.
True, I guess, yeah. But there was an interim where people sort of forgot that he was Chancellor.
That's
I
true.
don't think Wes Streeting would want to be Chancellor, because I think a lot can ride on that. And you're right, it's kind of a poison chalice where like a lot of the issues of the country can be sort of put on your lap. And I wonder if Keir Starmer would want him there, because I wonder if Keir Starmer sees Wes Streeting as a threat now. So maybe he wouldn't want him in that position.
Well, interestingly, there was a cabinet photo op scheduled this week that got moved, and I don't think it actually happened. They were due to have a nice little photograph of all the cabinet together in Downing Street. When they put all the publicity out, they do every now and then, and it just got pulled. And there's been rumours and talk amongst Westminster and some political commentators and journalists that there is a reshuffle imminent. So whether that's going to include changes at the very top and in number 11, who knows? But it will be interesting to see what he does with Wes, because, like you say, I mean, especially if he sees if Wes Streeting's a threat to Starmer, then he's going to want to put him somewhere where. I mean, Theresa May made Boris Johnson Foreign Secretary, right? And I think in her case, that was a case of, keep your enemies close. I wonder if Starmer would sort of do something the same, or whether he'd just keep him in the health brief.
Or send him to Northern Ireland and keep your fingers crossed.
We're all doing that. You can't see me. Edward said, no sympathy whatsoever for Reeves. No tears for the people she's driven to despair and threatened with absolute poverty, as well as the genocide she supports. No sympathy.
Yeah, crocodile tea. Crocodile
I'm gonna say something.
Violin. I know this is where me and Callum definitely disagree on this.
I'm gonna say something that's probably going to be controversial with our viewers now.
Shit lib incoming. Come on. Yep.
I'll take it. It's fine. No, I do think that we have to be careful with this, because the government have said, and a spokesperson for Reeves has said, that the reason she's crying was a personal matter. We gather back, for all intents and purposes, she had a row with Lindsay Hoyle as well prior to PMQs, on top of whatever this personal matter is. And I think that as much as I agree that she is responsible for some very, very harmful policies, and that there are people whose lives have been completely destroyed by the actions of Rachel Reeves and this Labour government, there is still a very small part of me that thinks that she maybe deserves a little bit of sympathy. I can sympathise with the fact that she. Put it this way, I wouldn't want to be Chancellor under any government. The position that she's in, but when you factor in the way in which the Labour leadership have essentially thrown her under the bus for their own fuck-ups on the welfare bill, and then you factor in the possibility that for all we know, she might be going through bereavement. We have no idea. The look on her face when she walked into PMQs today, and this was from the moment she entered. It wasn't even it didn't happen halfway through. This was the moment she walked in. She was visibly upset. The swelling under her eyes. It looked like she'd been crying all night. And it may be related to the job, but I just think.
I don't think you can call the death of her political career really a bereavement as such.
And look, so I need to respond. Fuck her. All right. The reason why I say that is, first of all, it is pure speculation to say there's something going on behind closed doors. There's something personal, right? But I also don't think that her tears is completely divorced with what's going on, even if she had personal issues. But to push back, even if something terrible is happening behind the scenes. There are people who have to go through bereavement and all these things with the fact that their welfare is going to be cut. I mean, I'm just going to use class as a sort of a defense mechanism here, because at the end of the day, she's Chancellor. She's a very wealthy person now. She's well connected. She will never be in trouble. So even if something terrible did happen to her, she's going to have that comfort around her. There's millions of people who are going through, and again, we're speculating. We don't even know if anything's happened, but worst case scenario, there is. There are people who are on welfare, on universal credit and PIP, who have the same things happen to them, and this Chancellor is hell-bent on ruining their lives, and people are going to die from this policy. So I have absolutely zero sympathy. And also, if this is so tough on her, don't be in politics. This is part of the game. It's not for the faint-hearted. I just wish that she was a fighter for disabled people, for unemployed people, and the working class. But I said this on Navarra as well, that basically what goes around comes around. I mean, she's upset that she's been stabbed in the back, right? First of all, this is very much a policy. But two, many people on the left of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, who actually wanted to make positive change, was stabbed by these bastards. So what goes around comes around. I really don't have any sympathy whatsoever. I couldn't even muster it, and I would consider myself quite a sympathetic person. There are people I would feel sorry for, and I feel like they don't deserve it. But someone like Rachel Reeves, a very powerful woman, pushing through disgusting policies. I don't know. I see her cry, and I feel nothing. And I think she deserves to feel this pain, because there are people who are going to feel real pain, even with the watered down policies. Over 150,000 people are going to be affected by this. Think of the physical and mental health people go through whenever they hear news of the budget or a new policy on welfare, or people who are in work and they get their bills through. They are struggling and people are scared, and she has the power to do something about it. But no, it's her fiscal rules. She could tax the rich and not do any of this, but she doesn't. She's made political choices. So I don't have any a sympathy or empathy left inside me for her. I'm too damn angry.
Yeah, she's a true believer. She's wanted to do this for years. This isn't a matter of fiscal necessity or anything of the sort. She spent yesterday trying to push through a policy that was going to drive hundreds of thousands of people into poverty. I'll go further and say I didn't feel nothing when I saw her crying. I laughed. Yeah. Fuck her. She's an evil person who deserves to feel pain. That's just the way of the world. I'm sorry. She has inflicted far more pain than she is currently feeling. And she did so to people who didn't deserve it, had done nothing to deserve it. So I'm fine with it. I don't give a shit. And Callum, I just have to say, it's a shame. Come the revolution, I don't think you're going to make it, mate. It'll be a shame to lose you.
He's up against the wall.
It will hurt, but you're on the fucking list, lad.
Listen. I'll take the hit when it comes, mate. I will. I'll
be the meme of Wesley Snipes with the tears in my eyes, but the gun to the back of my
Listen, I'll deal with it when the moment comes, mate. But Oral Moot said, if Rachel's tears are from a genuine personal problem, then why turn up for work? I mean, yeah, fair comment. I mean, but she's the Chancellor, so we'd probably be kicking off if she wasn't at PMQs today, given what happened yesterday. But I mean, look, you both make brilliant arguments, and I don't disagree with the impact of the horrific things that she's responsible for. I acknowledge that, but I think I'm just erring on the side of caution until we know a little bit more as to what.
Okay, but let me ask you, if you knew for sure that there wasn't something bad going on, like she didn't lose a loved one, right? Would that change?
If she was crying in the Commons today because the government were humiliated yesterday and her job's on the line, then she can get fucked. If that's why she was crying, I haven't got any sympathy at all.
Can you say get fucked again? Because that was awesome.
Get fucked.
Get fucked. Love it.
But we all I'm saying is we don't know that.
Yeah, no, we don't.
I think,
we don't.
And that's and it's yeah. We'll leave it there because I'm just
maybe I've become hardened with my experience of the Labour Party, because I think over the last couple of years, the thing that I focused my energy mostly on, right from the beginning of this channel, was the internal machinations and the internal fighting of the Labour Party, and I've seen how some of these utter bastards have behaved. and the smearing of certain people when they don't deserve to be smeared has mean that I've lost patience for them. Maybe if all these things didn't happen, maybe I would be more sympathetic. But seeing the journey of the Labour Party over the last 5 years, seeing how the Labour right have acted towards really good people, I'm out of empathy.
I'll quote her cabinet colleague, the Women's and Equalities Minister, a certain Jess Phillips, the Right Honourable MP, and say that if Rachel Reeves is annoyed about being stabbed in the back, perhaps she'd have preferred being stabbed in the front.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, fair play.
Jim's speech comment made me laugh.
Did
you see it?
Was that? No, I missed that.
This is so funny.
Segment out of Curtis Daly. Don't
fucking tempt me, Jim. Quality.
Oh, listen, if it gets clicks, you can use it. Why the hell not? I saw one earlier on as well that said, "Who let a Tory produce turn left?" Listen. All I'm saying is, all I'm saying is that when somebody cries, we have to ask why. Third Eye Blind, thank you for the £10 super chat there. I have zero for as a recipient of disability benefits after 30 years of work. She refused more money for employment support and then asked for $5 billion in cuts. I mean,
thank you for the super chat, and I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Speaking of super chats, we've also had Third Eye Blind's also gifted 20 Turn Left memberships during that segment there as well. Thank you.
I think Third Eye Blind might be a new viewer, so if you are, welcome. Of course, welcome to Turn Left, and appreciate your generosity.
Just quickly, we've got Marriage Courses Divorce. We've got Cheyenne. We've got Mustafa. We've got Nico. We've got Sneaky Fish. We've got Sophie. We've got Gavin. We've got David. We've got Hedge. We've got UK Bad Fella. We've got Mystic. We've got Sirius G. We've got Number 3. We've got Lewis Murray. There's a pattern going on here. Zangma. We've got Elaine. Anna Breath, and we've got Morgan Muffle, we've got Cag, we've got Stephen, we've got Tatey Bread, and that is the 20. So welcome to the team, everyone. I felt like I had to do that because I went through the 5 earlier, so I thought it would be rude not to. Moving on. Alice has said, it's almost like if you invest in people, they can do things that are productive to society. A low welfare bill in the UK only makes it harder for people to work, making a doom loop.
It's the false economy of austerity. Every time you try and save something in terms of disability or whatever, frankly, it always ends up costing you somewhere else down the line. It doesn't actually save money. It just shifts it to the NHS or prison or the police or whatever. Some other publicly funded body picks up that slack.
I mean, I think we have a very dangerous sort of culture. I think not in just this country, across many countries, which is maximum efficiency. Now, efficiency is a buzzword for politicians. Efficiency sounds great, right? Who doesn't want to be efficient, right? And it makes sense in some areas. The problem, though, is when we see efficiency in absolutely everything, right? We do it with public services. Now, for me personally, I'm happy for my taxes to go on nurses and doctors who sit on their ass for half the day and then have to work for half the day, rather than the fact that everyone is working at maximum capacity and maybe 1 or 2 doctors don't turn up on the real and everything goes to shit, right? This is the problem. When it comes to public services, you want bloated public services. You want that backup there, right? That same sort of idea is within welfare, right? It's all about maximum efficiency. We need to spend not too much on welfare. We need to penny pinch. And again, even though in one sense it's immoral, right? I don't think any government should ever look at cuts to benefits. But number 2, as Kevin said, austerity is a false economy. It shifts the money elsewhere, or it shifts the holes elsewhere. It doesn't get people into work. People die from it. You need I believe, higher levels of welfare payments to get people on their feet and get ready for the world of work. It's very, very simple. So this maximum efficiency really, really bothers me. Even in the workplace, right? I mean, I used to work in retail. I used to work for River Island, actually. Fuck that company, just saying. And it was the same because obviously when you have businesses that just wanted to make as much profit as possible and spend as little as possible, it was always at maximum efficiency. It meant you're understaffed. And a lot of the times you'd be working your ass off and you can't get things done. Customers are waiting because the idea that you had backup staff, or the idea that maybe you had more members of staff where, okay, not everyone was working 100% efficiency 100% of the time, but, it's a little bit easier for people. It means that you've got that capacity to, see to everyone's needs. But of course, it's not a massive moneymaker. It's good for local stores, but not good for business. And it's the same idea that's pervasive throughout governments and institutions.
Yeah. Yeah, you need a certain amount of redundancy built into it, yeah.
Exactly. Not the redundancy where you fire everyone there, but yeah.
No, as in things that are meant to sort of lie redundant in case you need them. So,
exactly.
You need the reason that we have such massively long waiting lists is because we don't have enough capacity to do the operations that we need to do in a timely manner. Yeah.
And it's a vicious cycle because they turn that around and say, "Oh, we need to cut more then."
Yeah.
But that's the point, isn't it? That Alice is making is that they do that, and then we just end up in this circle of people not being able to work more. So Kieran said, "Why is he still here? Not talking about me, talking about Andrew Neil. He has a home in mainland Europe. Go there, Neil. Leave us alone." It's funny how it's funny, isn't it? How these right wing sort of Brexit types always have homes abroad.
That's not the Brexit I voted for.
I would tell him on Twitter, but he blocked me years ago. But
did he?
It's not the
nice.
worst block. I called him a knob, and I felt like I was quite correct.
Yeah, no, that's just an accurate description. Yeah.
I mean, that is very accurate. I didn't even know he was still going, to be honest. I was surprised to hear that he was on Times Radio. Speaking of Andrew Neil, Edward Smith said, lots of working class people take the names of both their parents, you racist, classist arsehole.
Yeah, perfect. This is so true.
And Jim Speaks comment on the same issue. Nurse! He's gone off again!
And he's such a good encapsulation of what a gammon is.
He really is, yeah.
On this story, so you may have heard that the Radar Festival in Manchester have now dropped Bob Vylan from appearing this weekend.
Pussies!
They've had their visas removed from the US, so they've
free
had
speech
there. And I think Curtis, you tweeted about this earlier. It's funny the joy that the anti-cancel culture brigade get out of cancel culture.
I mean, this is what real cancel culture is, though, right? I think cancel culture does exist, but it doesn't exist in the way that the people on the right think it does.
Yeah.
And look, there is an element of cancel culture against right-wingers when you come out and say something disgustingly racist. You deserve to get cancelled. Although that doesn't really happen because in 5 years' time, they're back on the BBC saying, oh my God, look how cancelled I am. Right? I mean, Lawrence Fox was literally created by the BBC when they put him on Question Time and all these other politicians, right? This is what real cancel culture looks like. And it's so funny to see the free speech warriors, the woke rights, reveling in this when it's one of their own, they absolutely hate it. And the difference is one of their own called for literal violence against vulnerable people. And the other is, whether it's even violence, because it's saying death to is also kind of a saying, against a military force that's murdering children.
Yeah.
But of course, the right have never been in support of a free speech. They've absolutely hated it. It's always been the case.
Yeah, the soy right have been out in force over the last few days. They're desperately trying to do the cancel culture because, again, they were never against cancel culture. They just wanted to be the ones doing the cancelling.
Quite right.
The Nigel Farage, the perfect example, he felt that Coots not giving him a super duper fancy card, an account, was cancel culture, but happily took the moment out to congratulate the US government and to mock Bob Vylan for having their free speech rights basically stripped away from them. Fantastic. Well done, Nigel, on consistency, you prick.
JK's asked, hi all, I support Palestine Action. How long can we say this without putting the channel in jeopardy? In all seriousness, I don't know if any of you saw John McDonnell's interventions in the House of Commons today. He was there in the background shouting, will the Honourable Gentleman give way? Will the Honourable Gentleman give way? Like over and over and over again. Eventually came in with a point of order to put this to, I think, was it the Secretary of State or one of the government ministers, to basically ask if this prescription of Palestine Action passes, and he then goes outside and says that he disagrees with that. Is he going to be prosecuted? The response that he got from government was that essentially it's going to go to the House of Lords tomorrow, where it will be then viewed by them. If they also authorise it, it's then got to reach all the Senate. It'll be signed off, and it'll come in from midnight on the day that it's signed. So theoretically, if the
true, but there is also an injunction potentially that
there
Palestine
is.
Action go to the High Court on
So-
Friday morning.
Yeah,
which-
so I was going to come on to that.
Oh,
So,
sorry, go on. Yeah,
no,
apologies.
it's fine. But theoretically, if the House of Lords pass it all through without any issues tomorrow as planned, and it then gets signed, in theory, it will then be a criminal offence from midnight tomorrow. As in not midnight tonight, the 24 hours.
Midnight. It would be on Friday going into Saturday.
No, it will be Thursday going into Friday, because it's gonna be on the debate and vote in the House of Lords would be on Thursday, but then the hearings on Friday. So it would have already been signed, but then the hearing would essentially stop it as it was happening, I think. So, no, I'm lying. Ignore me. You're right, Kev. If the interim relief is not granted by the High Court, Palestine Action will become a prescribed legislation at midnight on Friday and Saturday. And you're right. So basically, if you want to show any support for them, you need to do it before midnight on Friday night. Although I put a tweet out just as they were voting on the motion. I would say though.
Literally, my stream is titled "I support Palestine Action."
Well, I was going to say again, come at me in the comments if you wish, but just for the next couple of days, certainly into Saturday, if the High Court don't rule in their favour, just be careful, because they will go after as many people.
Well, I mean,
I
don't think that. I don't think dropping it in a comment like this is going to put us in trouble, because obviously.
Oh no, this is absolutely fine. What I'm saying is I'm just saying. If the courts of justice rule in favour of the government on this on Friday, I do think the government will come hard down on people, and I think that some MPs are gonna face some challenges as well. So.
What about if I say that I come out and I support the maniac murder cult? Will they come after me for that?
Well, it's in the same bill. So
I would hope so, given it's literally in the same bill.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for now, you can say you support the Russian Imperial Unit as well, because they're technically not prescribed yet.
Do you know what the acronym is? It's
Wait,
RIM.
what are they called? RIM. The Russian.
It is.
Oh, the Russian Imperial Movement. Yeah.
So immature.
So, do you support the RIM?
No? Fuck.
Oh dear me. Also from JK. In 2 days, Starmer has pushed through bills to kill the disabled and ban dissenting protest, all while supporting the genocide of a race he doesn't like. We've seen this playbook before.
All's well. That follows the week where they passed the piece of legislation, which of course was voted for by Keir Starmer, in order to allow essentially suicide booths. Let's go. Kim Ledbetter and the Angel of Death. Love it.
As I was saying on TikTok the other night, that when in 2019, when the Tories won that election and Corbyn lost, and we had that terrible realization that the hope that we had for the future had just been taken from underneath us. Never in a million years did I think at that point that only 6 years on, we would have seen the back of the Tories and have them replaced with a even more Tory Labour government.
But Keir Starmer said he was going to make the moral case for socialism, so it'll be fine. I'm sure that'll happen any day now.
Yeah, it's coming at some point, isn't it? Give me strength. Also, Specs, Toby Young on Channel 4 yesterday talking to Ash was funny, trying to deflect by saying Bob Vylan were calling for the death of teenagers because teens serve in the IDF.
That's
it's like
crazy.
They aren't even trying.
Well, that's grotesque. The Israeli government send teens to have their fucking legs blown.
That's their problem, isn't it?
Yeah, like what the fuck? Yeah, talk to the Israeli government for sending children to be killed. You fucking idiots.
No, but that's perfectly okay. They can do that. They can send children to war as long as we don't say they shouldn't be doing that. Speaking about biases at the BBC, Leo said, unfortunately, it's the exact same bias that the BBC have against trans people and pro-TERFs. You know, it is, isn't it? I mean, India Willoughby's talked about this multiple times, where you know, if they have her or any other trans person on, they always seem to have a transphobe on for balance. But interestingly, they can have TERFs on without having to have a trans person on for balance. So it's not really balance, is it? But it's like what you were talking about earlier, Curtis, about, you know, objective reporting. This obsession from the BBC about partiality, like this documentary that as Katie points out is going out at 10 p.m. on Channel 4 tonight, comrades, or 11 p.m. on Channel 4+1, which is probably where I'll be watching it. You know, this we're going to see what this is going to show when it goes out tonight, right? We're going to see what it was at the BBC. I mean, we all know what it's going to show, right? We all know what's going on, but it's literally a documentary. It's showing what's happening. So how is it a breach of impartiality for the BBC to put out a documentary that says this is what's happening in Gaza?
Because it's not obviously a breach of impartiality. It's just the fact that the BBC is beholden to Israel's interests.
All they need, but the thing is, right, all they need to do is what they do on every bloody news item when somebody calls out the IDF, and tag a little statement at the end of the documentary that says the Israeli government dispute the images in this documentary, and then leave it up to the viewers to decide.
Yeah, just that after every scene of, like, you know, dead bodies and stuff, you just say the Israeli government deny the existence of the thing you just saw.
There's a lot of disputing that will be happening from the Israeli government.
The Israeli government ask you to
even that
this dead baby was clearly a crisis actor, says the IDF.
Yeah, I mean that to me is also kind of a false balance, because even trying to say, well, the IDF disputes this, I mean, you're literally seeing that on video, so you couldn't put that, and that would be ridiculous. If it's on film, it's on film. You can see it for real life. So, but it's the BBC. They're a load of dog shite.
And it's worse because it's not just the BBC. You got to bear in mind the BBC is one of the largest news collating services in the planet, right? Lots of other organisations, lots of media outlets, TV stations, newspapers get their lead from BBC reporting. They will just verbatim report the thing that the BBC reported. So it's like poisoning the source of a river. The entire river gets fucking poisoned. You know?
Well, BBC journalists can't even quote people correctly now without putting their own opinions in. If you look at Martine Croxall on the whole, pregnant people situation. So, and I mean that was a shame. I used to like her, but speaking of bad takes from me, I'm gonna drop down. But before I do, I'm gonna take some advice from Third Eye Blind, and I'm gonna try and get someone to help me see the light. Thank you both for a good chat, though. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Callum, for that. And of course, thank you to our viewers who tuned in. Of course, thank you to Kevin for joining me tonight. Remember to like the stream. And if you're not a subscriber, then please hit that button. If you want us to grow, then you can head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There is a link to our Patreon where you can support us monthly, or follow the other link to give us a one-time contribution. Alternatively, you become a YouTube member for just 99p. This Friday, we are hosting a special panel show, and this will be the first time ever where all 5 Turn Left contributors will be on the same show. Of course, it's Friday the 4th of July, which means 1 year into this Labour government. So that is going to be 5 of us reviewing the year for a Normal Ireland Live special. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you on Friday.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn Left.